Now, next up, we're very thrilled to welcome Anthony Scaramucci for an in-depth fireside chat with John Wu, president of Ava Labs. Anthony needs no introduction, but for formalities, he's the founder and managing partner of SkyBridge. He's obviously been a prominent figure in both traditional finance and in the blockchain space. And I'm sure he will bring a wealth of experience and insight. So please, a warm welcome from John and Anthony.
First of all, this is a great pleasure and honor having Anthony here. He's a wealth of knowledge. I think he's actually kind of a renaissance man. He's been so many different businesses. And he was up
Renaissance to like, means rebirth, right? Because I got fucking killed last night. So that.
Wait a second.
Rebirth.
He was up till 4 a.m. doing his podcast. He had 1.8 million viewers. CNN had only 1 or less than 1 million.
So that's what Elon Musk said, that the old media is dying. You have to accept that. The infrastructure is gigantic. We were at 4 World Trade last night. There were 4 of us, 2 cameras, a couple of lights and microphones, had 1.8 million viewers for 6 hours. Just think about the magnitude of that and compare it to what's going on at a place like CNBC where there's, 40,000 viewers a day or something crazy number.
Well, first of all, podcast is a very hard business.
We're going to talk about the election or no?
That can get 1.8 million viewers. Now,
anyway.
I know. So for people who don't know,
can we do a poll, John? Do you mind?
Sure, let's do a poll.
Okay, so not who you voted for, but raise your hand and don't revise history. Don't revise history. Come on, I know Trump won and he slayed her pretty good. Who did you think was going to win? Okay, for those of you that thought
honest answer.
Just be clear. Those of you who thought that Kamala Harris was going to win, I did, so I'll raise my hand. Okay, it's a good portion of you. And how many people thought Donald Trump was going to win? Okay, and that's basically what happened. If you looked at the composition of the people, more people thought Trump was going to win and more people voted for him.
Now, wait a second. He was on the transition team for Trump. He worked for Trump in a brief period. He's also a Republican that supports Harris. Now, so yesterday was not a happy night or morning for you, but your wallet improved a lot this morning. So, which one do you care more about, your heart or your ass?
Oh man, it was a great night for our portfolio, and it was a great night for my friends like Mike Novogratz and lots of people in this room that are involved with crypto. And I think if you were going to do an autopsy of why the Democrats lost that election, if they're going to really be honest with themselves, one of the things is that they weaponized the SEC and they applied rules from the SEC in a very arbitrary and capricious way. They lost lawsuits. They've been reprimanded by judges. They stopped the grayscale ETF in July of 2022. They had to sue. You couldn't get that ETF going into January of 2024. And they knew they were going up against the law. And so for whatever reason, the left decided to politicize something in our country that should not be politicized. The other thing that happened is, do you mind if I tell this story? Because I think this is insightful. There was a great meme that was out over the last couple of days, and it was a dad at the voting booth. There was a little tiny girl, and the girl said, "Dad, who are you voting for?" And he looks over to her and he says, "I'm voting for you." And the implication there was he's voting for the reproductive rights, he's voting for her health and safety and so forth. And it was a very effective meme. I'm going to tell you what happened last night. It was the opposite. Okay, 46% of women in this country voted for Donald Trump, and I think they were looking at their little boys and they were voting for them. Because whether you like it or not, there's a great culture war going on in the society right now where people are looking around and saying, well, wait a minute, I don't want my son canceled because of this nonsense. I don't want my son put in an unfortunate situation. I walked over here this morning, but was with Scott Galloway, and I think a lot of people know Scott. I was with Scott this morning talking about this dilemma for the American male. the American male aged 18 to 36 has a 33% higher cases, 33% more suicides for the American male 18 to 36. And I think it was the mom turning to the young son, where the son says, "Who are you voting for?" And the mom said, "You know what? I'm voting for you." And the Democrats, if they want to compete, they've got to have a reckoning with themselves and fix that.
So before they figure out the reckoning, there's going to be a transition. There's going to be a transition team. You're very familiar with it. From your opinion, who's going to land where?
Yeah. So, in 2016, when I was working for President Trump and he won, none of us thought that he was going to win, including President Trump. And I can tell you, it was 6:00 on election night, and President Trump, who was then Mr. Trump, he turned to me and he said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, What do you mean, what am I doing? He goes, "Well, I know what I'm doing. I'm flying to Scotland. I'm going to go play golf. I'm moving my plane from LaGuardia Airport to JFK. You can't fly internationally from LaGuardia." And at 6 p.m., he thought he was losing on election night, 2016. Yesterday, at around 4 p.m., they knew they were winning. Okay, they got exit polling data. So what happens in the situation is you get NBC News, CBS, CNN, all of those major outlets. They will send their exit polling data to both campaigns. And so I got to look at the exit polling data, and it was very rough exit polling data for the Harris team. So both Trump and Harris knew at about 4 o'clock yesterday, unless there was something seismic that was going to happen, Trump was going to win. The popular vote, I think, became clear by about 10 o'clock that he was actually going to win the popular vote. And so he is in a way different position 8 years later. He is way more organized. He has a lot more structure. He learned a lot about how the government operated the first time. But he does have a new set of people. And again, I'm going to talk very candidly to you guys. He does have a carousel system. You come in, you're waving and smiling. He hands you the MAGA hat. You're on his carousel. As you're going by him, the knife goes in your back, and you're out the door. And then he's got another person coming in. And, he does that to everybody. And so you can't be surprised by that. So my friends that want to go work for him, and they're excited to go work for him, as excited as I was in 2016 and 2017, you just have to be careful because, we say in our industry, past performance is not indicative of future results. But in Trump land, it is. You're going to be able to predict what happens, okay? So some of these people are going to go into the Trump wood chipper because they're going to do something that I would recommend that they not do that I actually did. And that is you get infected with the Trump mind virus and you want to out-Trump Trump. And so you go to the MSG and you say there's an island, there's a pile of garbage out on the island, it's Puerto Rico. Trump can get away with that. You actually can't get away with that. You're saying you want people slaughtered. Trump can get away with that for whatever reason. People don't take him seriously. But if you're working for him, they look at you and they say, okay, well, maybe this guy is serious about this. And so I would just say to you that it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to go, I'm 78 years old. I wanted to win because I'm a resilient, tough guy, but I really want to go play golf. He's going to hand the keys to the White House to Kevin McCarthy and make him the chief of staff. He's going to put Rubio in at Secretary of State. He'll get Scott Bessent or Paulson or somebody like Lutnick at Treasury. Linda McMahon will probably be the Commerce Secretary. And I could take you through the list of different people and where I think their slots will be. Or he's going to go in the weaponization of the government mode. And he's, look, he said this, so, some of my friends that work for him take him seriously and some don't. He says that he wants to use the American military to go after his political adversaries. He said it, I'm not saying it. He said he wants to shut down media outlets that are against him. Some of those media outlets have self-corrected, right? Jeff Bezos said, I'm not gonna print this. My editorial board has a endorsement. I'm not gonna allow them to print it. So you don't know what direction he's going to go in. If I was making a prediction here, I think he's going to go in the Kevin McCarthy, Marco Rubio zip code, and I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised at the formation of the government. Jay Clayton, I think some of you guys know Jay, a very close personal friend of mine, helped Jay actually, when I was on Trump's transition team, get slotted for the SEC. He'll have a big role. I don't know if he'll be at CIA. I don't know if he'll be at NEC. I don't know if he'll do a temporary stint back at the SEC. But they want to clean up the SEC. For this audience here, the most relevant thing from the regulatory perspective, they have a 100-day plan. They have a list of executive orders that they want to put in place immediately to take the heat off the crypto markets, take the heat off of different things, and to get more definition and less regulation by enforcement and less of this sort of weaponization going. The people around Trump, like Vivek, I was actually on TV yesterday with Vivek, and we debated a topic. I think we're going to be on Friday now. I think CNBC's asked me and Vivek to go through a list of topics together. And I like Vivek, and we had a very civil debate yesterday. And we're going to talk about different topics. But one thing that there's no daylight between me and Vivek on is this industry. This industry is a growth engine for the United States. It's very important for the United States to embrace this industry. I don't think people have fully calculated how important this next administration could be to Bitcoin. These guys are serious about putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet of the U.S. government. We have gold reserves in this country. As you guys know, there's some gold here at the New York Fed. There's a ton of it at Fort Knox. We're going to have a Bitcoin reserve.
How big is the reserve?
How big of a reserve? I don't know the answer to that, but it will be a percentage of the complexion of the reserves that we have. There'll be gold reserves, and then there'll be a percentage of Bitcoin. But the reason why that's important, John, it's going to cause a cascading or a domino effect. Other nations, other central banks will have to look at that and say, whoa, U.S. is embracing Bitcoin. There's 21 million Bitcoins. Do we need to embrace Bitcoin? And I think people know in this room that has a bubbling up effect. If Bitcoin is moving up, other coins avalanche, other coins, there's more space for those coins, or there's more space for the utility of those coins. So listen, I'm not in love. I'm always going to talk to people straight, and maybe we can take some questions from the audience. I'm not in love with the rhetoric. I don't want to dehumanize my fellow men and women that I'm traveling on this planet with. I don't like the rhetoric. When you're saying people are eating dogs and cats, when you're setting an us up versus them, it's a very, very dangerous thing. It sounds fine right now, and some of you, I can even see on the looks of your faces, it's almost a little comical, but it is dangerous because he's going to be the leader of the free world, and he's going to be the leader of something that is very important to every person's ancestry in this room and every person that you guys have given birth to or you care about. And I'll say this to you, and I want you to think about this. He did something from a political perspective that was absolutely masterful. Latinos came out and voted for him. Blacks came out and voted for him. In the exit polling, what was said? Well, I'm here illegally, so I'm with him. He's protecting me against the people that are here illegally. You see what he did? The Democrats never saw that. Democrats did not understand that. But again, I just think we have to be careful with our rhetoric in the country, because when we talk about non-white immigrants of the country and we dehumanize them, I think it's a stain on the U.S. It's not necessary for us to do that.
That's a good point. Any predictions for SEC chair, new SEC chair, or FTC or DOJ?
I'm not going to lie. I'm not close enough. I know that Jay has been talked to about potentially going in on an interim basis at the SEC. I don't think he wants that job. He's already done that job. And I think he's going to get a different kind of job and a very important job in the administration. But could somebody that Jay picks be in that seat at the SEC? I think the answer to that is yes. And I think that's very good for this industry because, again, Jay's whole theory about the SEC is we just want greater transparency and more disclosure. We don't want to weaponize the SEC. And so people probably know this in this room, but it's worth repeating. Sam Bankman-Fried's parents were very close to Elizabeth Warren, and they were very close to Gary Gensler. And so in Sam's parents' case, they were professors at Stanford at a time when Warren was a professor at Harvard. And so they had countless meetings with Warren about helping Sam to get the margin approval for FTX's exchange. When that exchange blew up, and that was very painful for me, by the way, because Sam bought a piece of my business. When that exchange blew up, it was about to tar and feather Gensler and Warren. And so what they did, which was very, in my mind, very personal and had nothing to do with this industry, but they went super hard at the industry to eclipse the fact pattern around them cavorting with the Bankman-Frieds. Okay, and so when she was on stage, I don't know if any of you guys watch this, but if you really want something entertaining, watch her try to debate John Deaton, okay? Because she could not explain on stage why she was so anti-crypto. She said money laundering like 2 times, and then he looked at her and laid out all the statistics of why there's not significant money laundering in this industry. And of course, the greatest instrument of money laundering is the US dollar. And she was frozen. She didn't have a position. If she had turned to him and said, well, I was trying to save my political career because I was tied into Sam and his parents, that would have been a really honest answer, right? But you're not going to get that from a politician. And that part of our history in terms of regulation is over, and I'm thankful for that. I just want us to come together. I got a lot of friends that work for Donald Trump. Had a lot of conversations last night with those people. Let's dial down the rhetoric. Let's figure out where there's common ground. Let's work together. He's our president. Let's unify behind him. And by the way, guys, we got a big industry here to grow. Let's focus on what we can do for this industry to make it grow and how it can work alongside of the government without this constant hostility and antagonism.
We all
And,
want
and
more
by the way,
silver
I am
score.
so glad
Absolutely.
Sherrod Brown is not returning to the Senate because, that was another one of Warren's minions. And listen, here's something I will tell you. Cuban and I sat with their team. Nova was here this morning, right?
Yep.
Mike was in the meeting. We were all sitting with them. We said, listen, you're not listening. There's no reason for us to be this hostile to crypto. And the crypto community is going to start finding public servants that are not going to be hostile to them. Why not take a neutral position? They didn't do that, and it really cost them last night. Okay, and so I like that, by the way, because hopefully on the next go-around, they'll start listening more. Brian Armstrong tweeted this morning, this is the most crypto-friendly bunch of public servants coming to Washington in the history of crypto. I only want him to tweet next congressional term that it's even better than the one that we saw coming in 24.
Andreessen and Elon tweeted build as well this morning. And from my position at Ava Labs and Avalanche, there's been so many TradFi and other enterprises who've built a pilot or a test net or something to get to a certain point. They were just waiting for a moment like this to get more conviction and to really accelerate their building. So there's a lot of excitement in terms of people who are going to be building a lot more. Want to do a little fast lightning round?
Yeah.
Okay. Stablecoins are 99% of dollar fiat reserves. Why is it that the U.S. won't want that sooner than later to keep its reserve status?
What do you mean exactly? I'm sorry, I don't really understand.
It just seems like it's taken so long for the government to realize
to
that.
get the stablecoin legislation,
Yeah.
you think?
Mhm.
Yeah, so that will happen in this congressional term. Gillibrand was reelected last night. Schumer wants that to happen. The younger Democrats are for it. I think Elizabeth Warren has gotten sufficiently scared related to this thing, and it's not that interesting to her. I think she'll go away. I don't know if you guys understand how powerful she is, because prima facie, when you look at her, she's a very ineffective senator. She passed one bill in 12 years, but she cut a deal with Joe Biden that Joe Biden lived up to. What was the deal? Drop out in 2020 so I can face Bernie Sanders, and you can basically be the president for financial services. So she staffed Treasury, she staffed the Fed, she staffed the SEC, and she staffed the economic team at the White House, who already had that Saab 121 thing set up for a veto. When it got to Biden's desk and he understood it, he's like, well, why am I actually vetoing this? And they said, well, blah, blah, blah. And so he ended up vetoing it, but it didn't go over well. All those people are gone. And so that legislation, I predict, will be passed probably in the first year. And I think it'll be passed with great clarity. And I think that the administration will do something that the Biden team didn't do. It'll go into the industry and say, okay, what are the best practices? How do we work together? How do we ensure customer and consumer safety? And what should these coins look like? And so I think you're going to see a lot of clarity on that by the end of 25.
So take that to the next step, then tokenized deposits, tokenized money, market funds. Does that completely just go nuts after banks embrace it and other financial services industries embrace it?
I do think that happens, and I would not be frightened of that any more than I would be frightened of telling you in the 1990s that we're going to broadband and the phone company, the charges on your long distance service are going to go from $5 a minute, $3 a minute, $1 a minute, no dollars a minute. But yet the phone companies are still in existence, and there's a very broad pipe that they're delivering into your homes, whether it's data, media, television channels. All those companies more or less survived. I mean, MCI WorldCom didn't because there was fraud there, but most of those companies have been reconfigured and survived. And I think the same thing will happen with the banks. There's transactional activity right now that are taking place at the banks that they're earning a lot of money off of. The analogy I would give you is long distance service for telecoms. They will find other ways to attract revenues and to deliver services to the consumer. And this stuff will get a lot easier for people to transact. You know, you could be in a situation a few years from now where your phone has a stable coin on it. It may have a digitalized token. Maybe it's on a layer like Avalanche or a Solana, and there's a stock certificate that's layered on that token. You could go into a Starbucks someday, and Starbucks could be having a share repurchase program, and they offer you a 20% discount on the food or the beverage that you're about to buy if they can lift the stock out of your wallet and take your token and transfer it into their wallet. I know that sounds crazy, but that could happen. And by the way, we have the technology to allow that to happen. Okay, and so I can see buildings like this. Maybe there's I don't know. I think it was Sylvia McCauley. Somebody said this to me, and I don't know if this is 100% true. We'd have to fact check this, so forgive me. But I think it's 60% of our assets are actually not liquid. You know, that would be real estate, collectibles, cars. They don't trade on an exchange. I mean, there's trillions of assets in the stock and bond market, the commercial mortgage markets, et cetera. But there's a good majority of assets that are not tokenized that we could liquefy. That's coming. And I think that will have dramatic, untold positive consequences for wealth creation, where even people that are, middle class, they could end up owning a small piece of this building through that process, and it could lead to them having more independent wealth as they get older.
Decentralized finance. Will we get an institutional version of it in the next 3 years?
Some form of it. I don't know if it will happen that quickly. These things have a tendency to take longer than we'd like, but yes. I mean, I think the future is bright. I think there's going to be a very big reset as it relates to this industry, and I think there will be a bipartisan commitment. And I think the big issue with Trump, and again, I want to speak very candidly to everybody. When Trump goes for something, they hate him so much that they go against it. Okay, and I'll give you an example. He put up all these restrictions in terms of people coming in as it related to the border. Biden got the job on the 20th of January. He's sitting in the Capitol Rotunda before the luncheon. He reversed all of or most of the border control restrictions that Trump put in place. Okay, and they did it because it was a Trump policy and they were going against the Trump policy. And then we started to get a fiasco situation at the border. So we have to be very, very careful of with Trump is that the other side will take a position, an emotional position against him just because it's him. Okay. And so what I tell people in the industry that are for Trump, and there's some of them are like mad at me because I'm not for Trump. I'm like, guys, relax, because you got to have people like me talking to the Democrats to calm them down, to make sure they don't overly emotionalize Trump. And we make this industry, we make the country, we make the parties a bipartisan commitment to the appropriate regulatory standards for this industry. Does everybody see that? We have to do that. Okay. And so you may not like certain views of mine or this, that, and the other thing, but trust me, you want the Democrats on board. Okay. And you want the Republicans and the Democrats in the middle as it relates to regulation and legislation associated with this industry.
Last question from me, and then I want to ask the audience for one or two. 2028, who's going to represent the Democrats? And I know who you're going to say for the Republicans. It's kind of obvious.
So you think it's going to be J.D. Vance? Okay. So you could write this down. It will not be J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is going to go into the Mike Pence wood chipper, okay? And chugga, 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 chugga. And you're going to remember I said that, okay? And it will not be J.D. Vance. It'll be somebody else, but it won't be him. On the Democratic side, there are several young people that are aspiring. I don't think it will be the people that you're hearing about, like the, Gavin Newsom's and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens to Hakeem Jeffries and others. But man, I just hope it's a moderate Democrat who, has a sister soldier moment. There's some older people in here that know what I'm talking about when Bill Clinton dressed down the whole sister soldier situation and got his caucus and got his party in line. But I hope it's a Democrat that can go after the radical left with all the nanny state nonsense and all the scolding and say, hey, knock it off. We got a country to run, and let's stop going after each other. But I think it's going to be a young person. It won't be J.D. Vance. I'm not sure who will be on the right, because he's going to get eaten by Trump. Okay, Trump is going to have him for a snack sometime in the third year of that administration.
Is anyone able to control Trump? Who can eat Trump?
No, nobody can control Trump. But I'll tell you I'll tell you what he's like. Okay, if you're 20 years younger than him, he's not going to listen to you about anything. Doesn't matter. If you're Steve Schwartzman and you're richer than him and older than him, he will at least listen to you. Okay, Susie Wiles. People know who that is. Raise your hand if you do. Okay, so she was on the campaign. Very senior person. Piece of trivia. She's Pat Summerall's daughter. I don't know if you guys remember the place kicker and the color commentator announcer, but she's worked on these Republican campaigns forever. I know her, incredibly effective. She ran a very good, obviously an amazing campaign. And she did something that the Democrats didn't understand. Why is Trump in New York? Why is Trump in California? Why is Trump over here? He was trying to win the popular vote, guys. Did everybody follow that? He knew if he won the Electoral College and the popular vote, he was shutting their asses up. Everybody got that? Okay, and he was also trying to help these under candidates with their congressional and Senate races. And so he listens to her. Okay, and why does he listen to her? Because she's really smart and she hits back at him. He hates people that go on bended knee. You trust me. Okay, you trust me on that. I know that. And I talked to a lot of his staff last night, and he says, Mooch, he's like calling you Rocky Balboa. You keep swinging at him, but he's already out of the ring. Point being is, you don't want to be a waif, or you don't want to be spineless with Trump, but he's not controllable.
All right, questions in the audience? A couple. You were first, I think.
So what's the future of Republicans for Harris in this industry? I think the Republican Party that I grew up in is over. And so I think you have to just accept that. There's a center-right coalition that could be reconfigured. But what would happen here, and some historian will write this 50 years from now, is Donald Trump was a third-party candidate that had a hostile M&A transaction with one of the two traditional parties. He went into the Republican Party, chopped the head off of the Republican Party, and replaced it with MAGA or Trumpism or whatever you want to call it. It's a perverted version of populism from the First America First movement in the 1930s and some elements of republicanism, but it's really not traditional republicanism. So I think those people either have to find a different party, that would include myself, okay, or they have to figure out a way to work with that party and stay in that party. But I think it's going to be very difficult because the rhetoric that's coming out of that party, I've got 4 sons and 1 daughter. I don't want my kids to talk like that. I don't want my kids to act like that. Okay, and I think it's just very, very bad role modeling. And we can equivocate about it, and we can say, well, it's good for this and it's good for that. It's certainly good for my Bitcoin price, but it's not good for America. So I'm going to sit it out, and I'm going to wait. I'm going to be respectful to him and his administration. I certainly want them to be successful, and to the extent that I can help them in ways large and small, I'm willing to do that. And I'm also going to have hard, honest conversations and debriefs with my friends that are Democrats. Like, you guys really have to wake up. You're missing. You think the meme is about the dad and his daughter, but there's another meme out there about the mom with her son. Okay, and I think those people are going to be in limbo for a while until we can reform that party. But the people probably don't remember this in U.S. history, but the Whigs were the conservative party for the party system in America. And they got in a huge fight over slavery, and they split and they dissolved in the 1850s. And the new center-right coalition was the Republican Party, and the first Republican nominee of that party was Abraham Lincoln. And that party is over. Lincoln's party, Eisenhower's party, Reagan's party, McCain's party, that party is over. This party is Donald Trump's party. It's been reconfigured. And could there be, after Trump, a new center-right coalition? I don't think in my lifetime it'll look anything like what McCain's party looked like 15 years ago. Take one more question, maybe?
Well, actually, I saw a hand in the back. Hey,
Okay,
Sasha,
in the
stay
back.
there. We have
All right.
Anthony. You're going to give us a little more time. Guy in the back standing, Charlie, question? Oh, I saw your hand up earlier, a little shy.
We'll take this
How
question
about
over
this
here.
guy?
Good question. Yeah, it's good. So it's a really good question, and I don't want to be overly cynical, but I do have an 11-day PhD in Washington scumbaggery. Okay, and it's like an honorary doctorate they give you if they kick your ass out of the place. Washington is not a swamp. I don't know if everybody heard the question, but DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, it sounded nice, probably wouldn't go anywhere, but it's Elon Musk, and Elon's a doer. He's obviously the greatest entrepreneur of our generation, perhaps in history. Could he effect some change? And so I don't think so. And that's not a swamp, by the way. That is a gold-plated hot tub. Okay, and they work together to curry favor and take lucre for themselves from the government. And if you're not playing ball with them, they figure out a way to immediately neutralize you. And Musk has 3 things that will prevent him from really being effective in that idea. 2 of them are his companies. That would also include X, but it's really Tesla and SpaceX, the 2 more important companies. And then the second thing is that it is impossible to change the direction of that government. That government has been in place for 250 years, and there's expectations from the American people from that government related to their entitlements. And you have a very top-heavy population right now in terms of where the baby boomers are demographically, and any abrupt change would tip the economy into a recession or a depression. And if you don't believe me, ask Elon Musk, because when he was asked about making these changes, he did say, and he's on record saying it, that we would have 2 or 3, possibly 5 years of economic crisis if we did the implementation of these changes. So I don't think any of that's going to happen. What I would like to see is a new guardrail system. If Elon could convince Trump of a new guardrail system, 15 years from now, you would get the deficit under control. And basically what happened when Bush's dad got the White House, George Herbert Walker Bush, we had high deficit spending in the 80s, and they were trying to figure out a way to contain the deficit, and they came up with this legislation called pay-as-you-go. You can Google it, pay-as-you-go legislation. And basically it meant if I'm going to get a tax cut, I got to find something in the budget to cut. If I'm going to raise social services, I've got to contemporaneously raise taxes. Bush lived under that. Clinton lived under that, which led to the budget surplus in 2000. We don't live under that anymore. It ended with 9/11 as we were prosecuting those wars. If we went back to that system and we got the Democrats to agree to it, Republicans and Democrats, you could tame the budget deficit in about 15 years, and you could unleash a tremendous amount of economic growth. That's the best we could hope for, and I hope Elon goes in that direction. And there's been several of us talking to his team about those ideas. Yeah, really good question. So we'll have to see. So really good question. So the question is, Trump's got 4 years. Can he just go and do a nihilistic frenzy and executive order different departments away, like the Department of Education and all this other stuff? And I don't know the answer to that question. I don't even think the people in Washington know the answer to that question. I think that would have to be adjudicated in the courts. If you're conservatives in here, Trump's got a shot at 2 extra Supreme Court justices. If you just look at the math of the situation, Justice Thomas will probably retire now because he's got, Trump's going to be replacing him. So you'll have younger people in those seats. And remember, with one stroke of a pen, he can put judges in place all over the place. It was one day, and it was a Monday, and I know it was a Monday because I was only there for 2 Mondays, right? So I do remember the days. And I'm in the Oval Office with him, and I said to him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "You know what I'm doing? I'm making justices. See this? I'm signing this piece of paper, and this is going to appoint a person to the process. They got to get approved by the Senate, even the appellate judges and so forth." He says, "Anthony, for 40 years, my sister was on the court in New Jersey, and I think for 40 years and millions of dollars, I think I helped 2 justices get appointments. I just appointed 16 judges. Do not underestimate the power of the American presidency." Okay? And so I don't know the answer to that. I don't even think he knows the answer to that. We'll have to see what the court system says on that. But you guys have been very generous to spend time with me like this. Thank you. I'm not a sore loser. I wish President Trump and his team well, love the country, and I love this industry, and let's grow this industry. God
Thank
bless.
you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.